How do you feel about your dad today?
I had to go through major healing in
Hmm.
order to even be able to tell this story, whether
Yeah.
as a podcast or
Thank you for sharing the story. This is not a normal story. Yeah. So
yeah.
thank you.
So
Yeah.
initially, what I did related to your question, I had to block my anger. I had to block my fear. I call it
Yeah.
as if I blocked it in an invisible black box. And I just needed to survive because I was in my mid
Right.
20s, making this $30,000 a year and responsible not just for me, but for my mom and my sister. So imagine
Right.
3 people in San Diego living with that.
Right.
So
Right.
I blocked it because I needed to survive and I was
Yeah.
working so hard. I became a workaholic. I was working day, night, weekends because I needed to escape from all these emotions that I was dealing with. But then a few years later, I got very, very sick. I got the swine flu and it affected my liver and I ended in the hospital. But then I was on a month and a half short-term disability. And some people would hear that and say, this is so bad, but it was the best thing ever. I was being forced to pause my life and to stop escaping from my feelings and to face reality. At that time, it was 2009, and there was no Netflix. At least I didn't know of Netflix. And there's so many movies you can watch as you're just laying down all day long. But that made me realize I need to go through healing and I need to go through forgiveness. And that's when I started hiring people. Not counselors. Counselors didn't work for me. I needed somebody to help me dig so deep with
Yeah.
inner child wounds and
Yeah.
all the insecurities and all the anger. So I tried all kinds of interesting methods of healing. And then after 10 years, I was able to talk about the story. So imagine how much time it took.
Yeah. Yeah.
One session, it was 3 hours, 3 full hours, just for me to be able to look at my dad's picture. So now, when I look about where I am right now, 23
Yeah.
years later, I forgave him.
Yeah.
I forgave
Yeah.
my ex-husband. As long as they're far away, they leave me alone. I don't want that energy to influence all the wonderful things I'm working on now.
Yeah, interesting. I love that you forgive them, not because what they did isn't reprehensible, but because the weight is something you carry, right? Like forgiveness, it does whatever it does for the other person, but it really frees up the person carrying the hatred, carrying the anger.
Yeah.
It's liberating for those of us forgiving, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's easy. So for our listeners, so it's not like you wake overnight and you forgive someone. And
Yeah.
it does take time. It does take work.
Yeah.
And it had to start by forgiving myself, which I never thought about that. Because many times we blame ourselves with what's happening and the action of others. So I had to forgive myself. And when I forgave myself, I was able to forgive other people around me. It's
Yeah.
a work in progress. Like I'm not healed yet. I still have sessions and work and dig deeper but because I do that, I'm able to relate to other people and their pain and their insecurities because I see it in them, the same thing I feel in me.